Hello, today I got a tag for you. This is the B tag, the new, improved, better B tag. And I hope there'll be a lot of buzz because bees buzz. B because B is for book. About 3 years ago, I did a sequence of alphabet tags from A through to Z, and a lot of booktubers did these. Here I have a new B tag. It's got a mix of some of the old prompts that I really liked with some new prompts. I hope you're going to like it. My name is Jim. This is my channel. Books, reading, and stuff. First prompt, and this is one I had in the original B tag. B is for Bildungsroman. Do you have a favourite Bildungsroman or coming-of-age story? This is a transformative novel taking the protagonist from their childhood or their infancy into maturity. There are many examples of this. Great Expectations, Jane Eyre, Huckleberry Finn, Tipping the Velvet, The Catcher in the Rye. My favourite is David Copperfield. I'm a big fan of Dickens, and David Copperfield was Charles Dickens' favourite novel, and it's quite autobiographical because David Copperfield becomes a writer like Charles Dickens becomes a writer, and there's some wonderful characters as he goes from infancy into maturity. There are some wonderful Dickensian characters in the book, like the obsequious Uriah Heep, the ever-optimistic Micawber, the Steerforth, who David looks up to in his infancy and finds he's not such a great person after all, and of course David Copperfield himself. Prompt number 2. B is for book to screen. What's your favourite, or if you prefer least favourite, book to screen adaptation? Again, there's quite a few of these. I liked One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the book, the film, The Silence of the Lambs, The Godfather. But for this I'd choose Rosemary's Baby, which was written by Ira Levin in the late 60s, and it was adapted to film by Roman Polanski, starring Mia Farrow, and it was very faithful to the book, the film, because I think this is one of the first books that Roman Polanski took to the screen. He later took Tess to the screen, which was also very good. Prompt number 3. B is for best. What's the best book you've read so far this year? I looked through my 5-star reads and it was a difficult choice, but I think the best one I've read so far is Ship Fever by Andrea Barrett, which won the National Book Award a while back. This is about the coffin ships that went from Ireland to America in 1847 to North America, and it's about a ship that went to Canada, and it's about a quarantine station and a doctor working in that quarantine station, and the condition of the people who came across, that many, because of the malnutrition from the famine, they were suffering from illnesses like typhus, so they couldn't be put into the general Canadian population or they'd start an outbreak of typhus there, and it was a fascinating read. Prompt number 4. B is for boring. What's a book you found boring but you are glad you finished? This year I read The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, which is a mammoth of over 1,000 pages. It's about Hans Castorp, who goes to a sanatorium in Switzerland. First he's going to visit his cousin, but later he develops problems with his lungs, so he has to stay there. He's originally meant to be there for 3 weeks, and he stays there for 7 years. There are some interesting conversations, and there's some very boring conversations. Some of it was very interesting, but large parts of it I found quite boring when they're discussing things like cigars. I've got no interest in that whatsoever. And there's not a lot of action. Hans Castorp does get lost in a snowstorm at one time, but most of the book is about the conversations between various characters at the sanatorium, and there's a lot of repetition of some of the themes they're talking about. B is for borrowed. Do you prefer borrowing books or buying them? What was the last book you borrowed? The last book I borrowed was Beach Read. I borrowed it from Datsy. And do I prefer borrowing books or buying them? Sometimes I like books which I can hold up. I would like to be able to hold up Beach Read, but I can't because I don't own it. But I don't reread a lot, so I'm quite happy to borrow a book so I can read it and then pass it on. Borrow a book from a library and return it. And my wallet thanks me if I'm borrowing books and not buying them. Prompt number 7. B is for bookshop or bookstore. Do you have a favourite bookstore? I'm now living in Tbilisi, and the bookstore I frequent the most is Biblus. Biblus is a chain of bookshops in Georgia, and most days I spend some time in one of their bookshops, and so that, I guess, would be my favourite bookshop. I've visited some wonderful bookshops in the past, like Shakespeare and Company in Paris, Foyles in London. I've visited Hay-on-Wye, the book town on the border of England and Wales. I've heard about bookshops like the Strand, but I've never been there. But my favourite, I guess, would be the one I frequent, which is Biblus. Prompt number 7. B is for badass. Who's your favourite badass character? There are plenty of them. Fingolfin, an elf from the Silmarillion, is pretty badass. I think I'll go with this guy, Harry Dresden. Creation of Jim Butcher, is in a lot of books, blasting vampires, fairies, and all sorts of other creatures. And there's one moment in one of the series where he's riding a reanimated T-Rex into battle against a host of necromancers, so he's pretty badass, this guy. Prompt number 8. B is for Booktube. Give a shout out to a booktuber who inspires you. I won't give a shout out to a single booktuber. There are many who inspire me, and some of the booktubers who I'm specifically tagging inspire me, and I've chosen the booktubers I'm tagging because they have a B in their channel name. So who do I tag? Well, there's Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading, who's a very kind and supportive booktuber, and she's one of the hosts of Shaketember, and through her I've got to reading a few Shakespeare plays. I read my first Shakespeare comedy, A Midsummer Night's Dream, a couple of years back because of Shaketember. There's Greg, at another bibliophile reads, who has an amazing library in his basement and has a lot of interesting things to say about books in general. There's Alan, who sometimes teams up with Greg on the live shows. Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics over in Oregon, who's a big fan of Irish literature and particularly James Joyce. There's Brian at Bookish, who has recently put out a book of his own about his uncle's adventures in the Second World War. There's Elizabeth, a Bouquin on Books, one of the hosts of People April, about biographies, another B. There's Pat, a Book Chat with Pat, who's come onto Booktube quite recently and has already created quite a following for her interesting videos. She used to teach English, so she has a lot to say about various authors and various books. And a booktuber who inspires me but doesn't have a B in his channel name or his name is Steve Donahue, but he does live in Boston, which is a B, and he regularly visits the Brattle Bookshop, which is also B, so I'll tag him as well. His original B tag from the original series got almost 1,000 views. Those are the tags, those are the prompts. If I've also put another 10 alternative prompts in the description if you want to do this tag, because I tag you as well if you're interested. You can do the 8 prompts I tackled, or you can do a mix of the prompts I presented and the other alternative prompts as you wish. So that's my B tag, a better B tag. Let me know in the comments what you think of it. If you enjoyed this video, you can give it a thumbs up. This will help me with the YouTube algorithm, and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.